Welcome back, everyone. Episode 3 of MegaBuild. First, I want to apologize because it's been so long since I posted a video, and I really want to finish this series of MegaBuild so you can learn from my experiences. Nothing catastrophic has happened. I've put thousands of miles on the car, to include driving from Columbus, Ohio to New Jersey for the Keys Auto Show. The one hiccup I did have, which was something that I kind of thought I was going to have an issue with in the future, was with how the turbo inlet pipe attaches to the turbo and how it connects to my Turner Motorsports carbon fiber intake and how the intake attaches to its little heat shield box there. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either part, but sometimes parts just don't play well together. So what happened was, about a month ago, it was a Tuesday night at like 10 o'clock, I'm doing a little vehicle inspection because I was going to go drag racing the next day. During my little vehicle inspection, I give the intake a little tug and I felt the turbo inlet pipe pull out of the front of the turbo. After installing all these parts, I know what that feels like. There was so much play in the turbo inlet pipe, literally it moves up and down a couple inches. I knew I pulled it out of the front of the turbo. At this point, it's like 10 o'clock at night and I'm thinking, do I really want to go drag racing tomorrow? Yeah, I do. So I drain the coolant, pull the water pump, take the intake off. You have to put the turbo inlet pipe back on the car. Once you take your little 3mm Allen and install that little threaded bolt back into the front of the turbo, put that 10mm nut back on, and as you tighten it down, it's going to push on the weld of the turbo inlet pipe and actually clamp it and hold it in place in the front of the turbo. I took that little bolt out of the turbo because it was just so hard to get the turbo inlet pipe with it installed. And it's not like the turbo inlet pipe came with instructions because, I mean, let's be honest here. How many of these parts you buy for your car come with instructions? I mean, even the Go Fast Spitz diverter valve, yeah, it came with a little instruction booklet, but that thing fits on so many different cars. You think they're going to make an instruction booklet for every car? No. Hey, this is how it goes together. There's 3 bolts, there's some springs, boom, right? That's why you turn to YouTube. That's why I turned to YouTube. When I first bought this car, I started looking up a bunch of things on YouTube. Then I realized nobody really covers stuff for M235s, which is why we're here. Anyways, I'll show you how, in the video and all that, how to get everything put back together, but where we are now is we've already got the Go Fast Spitz diverter valve installed on the car. Everything else is taken off, so we got to put everything back together. We need to put the turbo inlet pipe back on the proper way, the boost pipe, then the electronic wastegate harness, plug adapter thing for your JB4, how to pin that in correctly to the JB4 itself, how it connects in the little box. I'll show you that. We also have the thermostat and that coolant line that goes from the water pump up to the thermostat, then the thermostat, the line that runs up here to this expansion tank, and then just getting everything else back together. The last part that you're going to put on the car is going to be the water pump. Just like you started, it was the first thing we took off the car, it's the last thing we're going to put back on. After the water pump's back on the car, then we're going to install our Wagner Tuning downpipe / cap. And I did get the 200 cell catted downpipe for the car. You actually don't have to have anything else taken off the car to do it. The hardest part is just getting the stock one off, and because there's really not too much room, but it was actually pretty easy to get the Wagner Tuning one back in the car. I'll show you that, how to take the O2 sensors off. And there's something else I'm going to show you in this video because I haven't seen it in anybody else's videos. There's actually a small gasket that goes between the turbo and the Wagner downpipe / cap. And then you put the clamp back on, clamp it all in, connect everything, and you're good. Really not that hard. The downpipe was actually pretty simple. So I've been bumping my gums long enough. You probably already skipped this anyway. Let's go. Next in the order of modifications, we have this right here. This is the electronic wastegate. I need to unclip this and connect the JB4 connections to it. All right, I'll try to show you this as best I can, keeping my hands out of the way. Because there's no room for me to show you down, where the turbo is, how to get that connector off, coincidentally, that connector is the exact same one that's on the mass airflow sensor here. It's, same tab style and everything. So what I did was I reached in with my left hand, pushed down on the center tab, and then with my right hand, pushed on the side of the connector and wiggle it off the turbo. That's the easiest way to do it. I know there's a ton of videos online of, hey, use a fork, do this and that. You don't have to do that because we removed everything to gain access to this area. All right, moving on. Now to connect the JB4 harness, this is going to connect into the wastegate and this is going to connect into the plug that you pulled off the wastegate. So first you have to make sure that the little gray tab is disengaged. That way when you put it onto the wastegate, you can push forward and it'll lock in. There. Got that one on. So that's on the wastegate. And the other plug, the top of this plug is the one with the tab on it, and just match it up with the section of the JB4 harness that has this tab part on the top of this. Just because you can see the inside, how there's this little notch inside this, and there's a flat space on the plug here. So all you gotta do is make sure those line up, and it clips in, and hopefully you hear a click. Now when it comes to routing the purple and blue wire for your electronic wastegate, when you disassemble your JB4, and if you're doing this, I assume you've already done this, JB4 process to begin with. So take the JB4 apart, and there's this rubber grommet right here. Take the wires and push them through that. This way the wires are going into the JB4 enclosure just like the other wires would. This large connector here with all the pins and all the wires going into it, this is your DB25 connector. This is the one that you have to put those little pins inside the correct numbered ports. If you look inside, use a flashlight, you can see numbers 1 through 13 and then 14 through 25 on the bottom. Make sure you put the pins in the correct ports, because once you push these pins in, they actually lock into place. The only way to get them out without destroying your DB25 connector is using a DB pin removal tool. You can get them off Amazon. I actually went to like a computer store and bought one just to see like how hard it really was. It does take a little bit of, some cramming of getting that little pin tool in there, but you can get these pulled out if you make a mistake. Now that we know how the ports are numbered, the purple goes into number 9, and all I gotta do is look over here, and I can see the yellow is at number 7, so go a space, and then here's number 9, push that in. Push it in, and you can feel it kind of click, and then look at the front of it just to make sure it's, the same depth as the other pins. And then the blue wire goes into number 16, so it's the bottom row, and it's the third one in from the left. So right there you go. Now this wiring, this is for N55 cars with electronic wastegate, so it's 2014 and on. I'm pretty sure they're all the same, but check the N54 Tech website to make sure. Once you have your purple and blue wires in place in the DB25 connector, just put your JB4 back together and you're done. I know it's hard to tell once down there, but this is the final car's fully assembled picture, of how I ran the, wiring for the JB4 electronic wastegate harness. But, here, that's the clip. There's the clip on the wastegate. And I just ran the wiring, up through the side here. And then, it comes under this rubber piece. And then, under this trim panel, that's, that right there, that's where I have my JB4. Before I did this install, I did some digging around through, the N54 Tech website, and a lot of people were concerned about, heat and, these wires melting, all that. If you think about it, it's going to be fine. There are coolant lines and other electrical connections down there. They survive just fine. So as long as your wiring or the harness or anything isn't touching the exhaust manifold, you're fine. So don't freak out. Just keep it away from that stuff. I wrapped part of that, JB4 harness in some Tessa tape. Tessa tape is the same stuff, other things in your engine bay that BMW uses, it's wrapped in that. I bought a couple rolls of it off Amazon and cleaned up certain things in my engine bay, some of where the Tessa tape was looking nasty or coming apart. So there's one solution, to help you, keep the wires tucked away and away from anything dangerous. Now that we're done with the electronic wastegate, we can move over to this coolant hose and the thermostat. The footage I actually have of me removing this coolant hose was corrupt, so I couldn't use it, so we just kind of skip ahead a little. It's pretty straightforward, you didn't miss much. This hose is the one that connects to the water pump here, so on the very bottom here, this was the portion that connected to the water pump going straight in, and it runs up, and this is where it connects to the thermostat. And if you remember in the beginning when I disconnected the overflow tank. This is the part that connects to the overflow tank. So this whole thing is one piece. Right there on the thermostat, that's where I just showed you that connection. We need to disconnect this worm clamp, pull the electrical connection out of there, the thermostat there. You can see the quick release connect. And then you also have another quick release connect on the bottom underneath that worm clamp, and that's it. Just like 5 connections, no big deal. All right, here's the new thermostat. Here's where the quick release clamp was. I know it was on the top, oriented in this direction up. This is that hose that connected, to the water pump here. This is the new one, and this is where it fits onto the thermostat. Now, easy enough. Arrow right here. All you gotta do is match up the arrows, but let's grab this clamp first, and I think it was this way. I think it was oriented in this direction. I got it from the bottom. But you could also do it from the top. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. I don't think it really matters right now because I'm actually going to attach the hose to the thermostat right here and tighten this down before I put it back in the car. Like, I'd rather do it right here because of the angle and everything. I'd rather do it right here, attach it, and then put it in the car. Does that make sense? I'm going to show you on the old one right here, but we've already got this connection connected to the radiator. Push the clip back in. It's connected. I can't tug it off. It doesn't turn or anything. This holds it in place. Need to reconnect the electrical connection. This one's already connected because we connected it on the pipe before we push it back in. We've got the quick disconnect on the bottom here. Just need to push that back on, make sure it snaps into place. And then this one here, this is where the worm clamp is. And just make sure you orient the screw on the worm clamp up so it's easy to tighten from the top. Make sense? All right. Now we're going to do the PureTurbos turbo inlet pipe. We have to put the crankcase breather tube on afterwards. It doesn't matter if you have the coupling on here or not. So you don't have to make the mistake I did. You see this is scratched up right here on the turbo inlet pipe. This is from the little bolt that's on the turbo itself where the stock intake and that little 10 mil nut, this is where that bolt is right here. And I couldn't get the PureTurbos inlet pipe all the way in because it was, it was rubbing right here. This is a 3 mil little, Allen here. This is that bolt that goes into the turbo that the 10 mil nut screws onto that holds the stock turbo inlet pipe in. A 3 mil, Allen socket on here fits right into the end of this. A good crank cracked it loose and came right out. This is a real tricky fit on this piece right here. I don't know if it's necessary. I did anyway. But there's, this clamp that screws in right here with a 10 mil. I took this off. Inlet pipe. Push it down in. So sneak it in here. And I'm not forcing it or anything. Look through the other side here, and you can kind of guide it in with your other hand. It took me a little bit of time to figure out how to get it in there. I was trying, the stock one, you just shove it right back in there. It's easy. But this one just took a little bit of finagling because of the height on the, piece that, the flange that this, bolts onto. Once you have the turbo inlet pipe in place, get under the car, push the turbo inlet pipe as far in the front of the turbo as you can. Now, grab that little threaded bolt we took out of the front of the turbo and put it back in. Once you have that installed, grab that 10 mil nut and thread that back on the bolt. As you tighten it down, it's going to come in contact with that weld that's on that turbo inlet pipe. It will slowly tighten and clamp that turbo inlet pipe in the front of the turbo. You don't have to tighten this bolt down super crazy tight. Just get it until you see the turbo inlet pipe come at least close to flush with the front of the turbo. Once you have the inlet pipe installed, now's a good chance for you to actually just do a rough fit of your intake just to make sure it's going to fit properly. Because you can actually adjust the angle of the inlet pipe of where it sits in there. Once you get it in the right place, then tighten down that little nut and you're good to go. All right, so we're done underneath the car. Now I need to put the crankcase breather back on. I just went to my little oil tray, just a little dab of oil on the rubber seal here. This is gonna help it slide into the turbo inlet a lot easier. And just make sure you know which direction you're going, and make sure you know which direction the plug goes. So this is gonna go up behind this oil line. All right, now we just need to put the little 3mm screw in. So to tighten that 3mm screw, a swivel adapter and a 3mm. It's kind of hard to reach. I know you're just gonna see my hands, and it doesn't have to be super tight. You can see, the flange and how tight the flange is on the turbo inlet pipe. Oil catch can. The way that I've seen it put on, another YouTuber, I forget the name, but it was on a different car. Same motor, same, front of the vehicle, but different chassis and everything. You've got the catch can right here. Now, this is one of the short ones, and there is no way this is gonna mount in here. Also, it's so tight against these oil lines, it's actually touching them here. Like I said earlier about the intake and the engine rocking back and forth from, torque, it's gonna push the oil lines right against this catch can every time. So over time, these are gonna get bent, you're gonna have an oil leak, destroy your car. So I'm gonna figure out another solution, and I'm probably gonna try to mount it over here somewhere. I just have to figure out, another way to mount it. We've got the reservoir here for the overflow, so I'm gonna try to see if I can mount it here somewhere, but obviously this doesn't reach, so I'm gonna have to figure out something else. Maybe some different tubing, a tube that connects this to this, and another tube to connect over here. I'll figure it out. Whatever, but I'll let you guys know as soon as I do. In the meantime, I'm gonna hook this back up where it's supposed to go, and hopefully I can get this thing off of here without breaking all the connectors. If I do break them, at least I can just connect a, like a rubber hose of some type to the catch can wherever I'm gonna mount it. So I'm not terribly worried about breaking these things off. All right, now I need to reconnect the sensor that's on the, crankcase breather here. And it actually goes on upside down. There, clipped in, good. Now, for the water pump, this is the PureTurbos unit I picked up from ECS Tuning, and I didn't buy the one that said original BMW because, and I'll show you this, the one that I pulled off of the car, and when I compared the stock BMW one to this PureTurbos one, they are exactly the same. The part numbers, everything are the same. It's identical because the one that came off the car is a PureTurbos unit. So I don't know the difference of, so you can see the I know it's hard to see, but here's the little P for PureTurbos. Same thing on the, new one here. It's the exact same part. If you do any research on the part numbers on here, so, this part number right here, excluding everything else. So this 702-881-660, that's the PureTurbos part number that's here on the box. And if you compare it to the one that you pull off of your car, it's going to be slightly different. I tried cleaning this off so you could see the part number on it, but it just doesn't show up on the camera. But the part number between the old one and the new one, obviously this is 4 years older because this actually, look on the side, it has a manufacturing date of 2014. Like I said, my car was assembled in September 2014, so this is obviously, a 5-year-old part. So it was updated, so the part number on the new one, the part number here on my old one is like a 460, and the new one is a 660. So it was just an update. They updated, I don't know, something in it, whatever, but it's the exact same part, fits exactly the same, everything. I just need to wedge this back into place. I'm going to put the top bolt for the water pump on first, and you can actually just kind of dry fit the hoses on the end of the water pump here just to at least make it easier instead of wiggling everything around it. And I do recommend replacing the water pump bolts with new ones. It's only a few bucks. I'll put a link in the description. So I'm reaching my right arm through that same path that the turbo hard pipe goes through. That's the way to reach this top bolt. And I'm just gonna thread it on as much as I can with my fingers. Now remember, for these clamps on the water pump, make sure you orient them in a direction that's the easiest for you to get back on. So this is where I'm putting this one, and make sure you put it between the white lines here, because the other white line, this is where the actual end of the water pump is on this, I don't know, piece. And the one above it, same thing, make sure you orient this in a direction to make it easier to tighten. Obviously I haven't done that on that one yet, but so I've got my 1/4 inch ratchet with a 3-inch extension and my 6mm socket. I'm gonna hold the clamp on with my left hand while I tighten it with the right. Now moving on to the boost pipe. I took the black clip and this other clip off of the stock turbo pipe, just because I was fitting this on and off, making sure I had the orientation correct of how it went inside, so I can match that with the hard pipe. So the bend in this bend goes around the thermostat. So where the clip is here, this section of the clip is at an angle like directly to the side of the car, and this portion of the clip is toward the top. Does that make sense? All right. Now I'm gonna make sure, I forget who even makes this pipe. I want to say I got this from Racing Dynamics, but the clips are oriented the exact same way, luckily. So the pipes, match and bend, and the orientation of the clips. Now I just need to make sure I put the hard pipe oriented in the same direction, where this section of the clip is to the side of the vehicle. That makes sense? Now, the hard part is gonna be this, because there's a bunch of stuff in the way where this is, so I'm probably gonna remove this clip. You just pull it off. I'm gonna fit it onto the turbo. I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna do this part. I may put the intercooler on the car and then just, figure out how it's gonna fit, and then I'll have to, maybe do some markings, with a paint pen or something, or a marker's not gonna work, obviously, but I'll have to figure out how I'm gonna need to orient these pieces. Another thing, when it comes to the clip on the bottom here, if you orient this in the direction, this on the side, this piece, where this portion of the clip, this is on the bottom. So I should try to make this go the same way. Here's the clip on the side. Make sure this clip is on the bottom, so I'll rotate this a little bit, because this needs to be easily accessed from the bottom in order to get this to clip on correctly. Because the intercooler is the last thing we put on the car, we need to put the boost pipe on now while we still have room. So go ahead and attach your boost pipe to the front of the turbo, which includes putting the clip on to hold it in place. And make sure you transfer over the gaskets from your stock boost pipe to the aftermarket one, if your aftermarket didn't come with them. Before you put the boost pipe in place, make sure you loosen up these two clamps, so when you dry fit the intercooler, you can adjust this, silver pipe in or out of the coupler. Then you can tighten down the clamps. But we'll do that later. Here's a comparison of the stock intercooler with its plastic end tanks and the Turner intercooler with, the nice welded, definitely a height difference. Turner one's, definitely a little bit thicker. These are the mounting screws that came with it, and they go in the same stock location as the other ones, those nasty rusty things. In order to get these on, there's no Allen key, little thread thing in the bottom of this, so you got to break out your two nuts. So once you pull your nuts out, do the double nut method here. You need for this, it's a 10 mil. So I've got a 10 mil wrench and a 10 mil socket, and you just need to tighten these together. Once these are tight together, you can use your socket and screw the mounting hardware in. The stock screw is not long enough to go all the way through. I just screwed this in as far as like where the threads start for this. So right about here at the end of the plastic. This is where the threads end for this portion. And it just went all the way through. I don't know if you have to go that extreme with it, go all the way through. I did. That's how it is. To detach these two so you can get these off, just put your wrenches back on and crack them loose. Presto. Here's the turbo pipe. This is the pipe coming right out of the turbo that connects into the intercooler. You know, I oriented the, bolts on the clamps in this direction, and this hose, you can just unclip out of here to give yourself a little more room. Just be careful with it, of course. Same thing on the other side. You can unhook this clamp, and push this coolant line out of the way. That way you have a little more access to the charge pipe. Now, on my aftermarket charge pipe, I did unscrew one of the clamps here. That way I can move the charge pipe around a little bit to get a good firm seat on the other side of the intercooler. If you have the stock one, you should be able to maneuver around a little bit just to get it seated correctly on the intercooler. I would suggest having something to set the intercooler down onto. If you do have to take a break and set the intercooler back down to the ground, use like a towel or something. So you have to make sure you get the, sides of the intercooler in the slots to get it correctly in place where it goes mounted on the car. And I'm not gonna lie, this is a pain in the butt. Once you get one of the sides on, thread a nut. Then get a nut for the other side. Get it over the bolt. And take a break. Whew. All right, underneath, look at all that junk. Underneath the car, this is looking from the driver's side through the fender well here. That is the charge pipe right there, where the charge pipe attaches to the intercooler. And just to make sure, you can see the other side from underneath the car, but just to make sure that you get the clip fully seated in the groove on the intercooler, you can come over here on this side and look. And it's the same exact way on the other side, on the passenger side. You can look through this side of the car and make sure that the groove is lined up with the turbo hard pipe to get it securely fastened into the intercooler. All right, I got the intercooler in, and I don't know who makes this. It might be right there. But this is what I mean by making sure the intercooler gets in the correct slot. There's slots right here on this. Same thing with the factory intercooler. It slides up through the slot, and then just make sure you get the, the nut tightened up. Get the intercooler tightened up there on the, tighten it up. All right, here we go. This is the last thing we're going to cover in this video, which is putting on your downpipe / cap. A very important thing to mention here is making sure you get the correct part. If your car is an N55 with electronic wastegate, you have to make sure you get the correct catalytic converter / downpipe, because it has a 4-inch inlet. If your car has a pneumatic wastegate, it has a 3-inch inlet. So make sure you get the correct downpipe and make sure you get the correct clamps for it. I'll put links to the correct parts down in the description below. So if you have an M235i with the electronic wastegate, which I think they all are actually, it's the 4-inch clamp, and make sure you get the correct downpipe. All right, let's get into the install. To disconnect your O2 sensors, here up on top of the motor, you've got all this sound deadening foam stuff in the way, and all you have to do is just rock these out, and this little gray tab is what locks and holds these in place. Now make sure you're only pulling on the connectors and disconnect them. The front one, there's no color to it, it's just black or gray, however you look at it. Same thing with this one in the back here, just rock it out. Pull on the little gray clip and disconnect it. This one is actually color-coded blue, and I don't think you can accidentally connect these. Yeah, you can't even connect the wrong one here. To give yourself some more room to remove the downpipe and put the new one in, go ahead and remove this aluminum brace here. It's only held in place by 2 of the 8mm body screws, just like all the other ones underneath the car. There's also this big panel here. Same thing, this has a couple 8mm screws. Once you have all the screws out of this panel, then you can rotate it like this to actually remove it from the car. To reach the forward clamp on the downpipe, this is the clamp that connects the downpipe to the turbo. I have a 3/8" drive with a short 13 mil and a 3" extension, and that's plenty enough room in there. As long as you've coated these with PB Blaster, mine literally didn't take much effort at all to crack that thing loose. I'm gonna reach under with my right hand in between the CV here, and you can see I can get my hand on the wrench here. So I'm gonna hold the socket on the wrench with my right hand, and I'm going to use my left hand to, actuate the ratchet here. And this is pretty easy. There's, plenty of room to swing the ratchet around. No big deal at all. The other bolt, or the other clamp, the back one, it's right here. I mean, this is easy. This one is actually a 15 mil. And once again, you can see that this is soaked in PB Blaster. Easy day. You're also going to need to take these two bolts off the hanger here out of whatever external Torx this is, probably like a 10 or something, but as long as you drop these two bolts off, the exhaust will hang down and give you room to wiggle the downpipe out of the car. Once you have the top clamp and the bottom clamp removed from the downpipe, and you have the hanger lowered from the midpipe, then you're ready to move up here to all these, nuts and bolts and clamps that attach the downpipe actually to the car. Don't worry about these two external Torx bolts. These are actually holding a hanger on that you don't even need to remove. The way this works is you have these two center bolts right here. These are actually sandwiching the upper bracket and the lower bracket from the downpipe onto this middle hanger here that's held on by those two external Torx bolts. So grab your 13 mil ratchet and a 13 mil wrench and remove the two center bolts and the bottom and the top one. Once you have the cat downpipe out of the car, this is a good opportunity to look at this back corner of the engine. So this right here, this is the valve cover, your plastic valve cover. This is a good time to check and feel around up here and see if you can feel any greasy oil leaks or anything, because this part of the car you absolutely cannot see unless you're under here and have done all this. Know what I mean? Once you have the downpipe cat out of the car, now you just need to remove the O2 sensors. And this is like one of these, rent it O2 sensor things you can get at like, your local auto parts stores where they, it's like, hey, it's $30 to rent it. We'll give you 25 when you return it, or whatever it is. I don't even know how much. I've had this thing for years. I obviously rented it and never returned it. So they just charge you for it however much it is. But, where it's open on the one side so you can actually get it through, and then crack these loose. I just stood on the downpipe with 1 foot, cracked it loose, and that's it. Just make sure you remember, which one is the top. Remember, the big mouth is the top, little mouth is the back part towards the muffler. So make sure you put the O2s back in the correct place. Know what I mean? As far as the clamps go on these, can you reuse them? Yes, you can absolutely reuse them. Just clean them off as best you can. If you are going to reuse them, especially this back one, you do have to unbend all these tabs and pull this off, then put it on the new downpipe, bend the tabs again. Me, it was only, an extra few bucks. I mean, I'm already spending $700 some on a downpipe. I might as well just buy new clamps, you know what I mean? Here's the Wagner downpipe, and it does come with new hardware to mount it to the bracket. When you're mounting the new clamp on the lower portion where the, cat downpipe attaches to the exhaust, the lip of the downpipe actually fits under these ones that have little notches on them. So what you have to do is just make sure you press this on, and it's hard to do this one-handed, but just press it on until it clicks, and you can actually see that they've, seated on there. All right, this is what I mean. So, these certain, clips that have like this little section on them, you can see that they've actually clipped onto the lip of the downpipe. So I guess that's one advantage of using a new clamp. The section in the center here where the bolt is, this is the section that doesn't have any of these little, bendy tabs. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the Wagner downpipe and the stock downpipe. So on the stock one, the cat actually goes, from here, the seam, to right here. You can reach your pinky in and feel the actual converter element. You know, it starts right here and then goes back to here. So there's, you know, these two sections of catalytic converter, you know, honeycomb. And then on the Wagner piece, you know, it only goes from here to here. So it's literally half the cat. Looking at some of the other, you know, high flow cats out there on the market, even though this is just as wide as the stock one, if you think about it, the wider downpipe, even though it does have, you know, the 200 cell catalytic converter element in there, I would think that because it is wider, like the stock one, that it will flow more vice some of the ones that are thinner that do have the element in them. You know, makes sense to me. But of course, it's still more restrictive than a straight pipe. I picked the 200 cell like this because a straight pipe makes the car so much louder, and I've done that before on cars. Like I did it on a past Evo, and it made the car just annoyingly loud, especially on the freeway with the drone. I didn't want to deal with that. I still want a car that I do like to drive back and forth, especially like for me to go drag racing. It's quite a drive for me to get out to the track. So sitting in the car for an hour, I definitely don't want to sit there and listen to this constant drone on the freeway. Know what I mean? Here's another side-by-side of the, you know, Wagner downpipe on the right and the stock downpipe cat on the left. You know, you can see how tight the cells are on the stock one, you know, vice how much larger they are on the Wagner. The way the stock hanger was made, it's got this open U section here, so you can actually rest the downpipe on this, which will help you get the, you know, the clamp on the top upper part of the turbo there. So it can actually rest against this, and you can tighten down a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing with the Wagner downpipe. I'm going to tighten this bolt, you know, get it close to tight so I can at least, you know, let it rest on this hanger, which will help me get the clamps on the top and the bottom. To make it a little bit easier on yourself to reach the ends of the O2 sensor connectors, you know, to pull these up to the engine bay to clip them on, I've got some twine here. I just wrapped it around the, you know, reservoir of the I just wrapped some twine around the overflow reservoir here, and I'm just going to tie them onto the ends of this, and when it's time, pull them up. Make sure after you remove your downpipe that you do remove this gasket as well. You need to replace this gasket to make sure you get a good seal between the turbo and the downpipe. I'll put a part number for this in the description below. So here's the gasket. You got to put it in the little lip here on the turbo. And the new gasket does fit in here snug enough so it's not going to fall out while I'm trying to put the new downpipe on. I don't even know what this thing's made of. Asbestos? Who knows? After fiddling around with this thing for a little bit, you know, with the downpipe on the turbo and all that, I think it's easier to, you know, get your V-band clamp up there on the turbo and then put the downpipe on. I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a struggle getting the V-band clamp on and making sure it gets, you know, fully seated all the way around and close enough so you can actually get the bolt threaded in there. Just make sure that you leave, you know, all of these loose, because, you know, this might get in the way a little bit. And like I mentioned earlier, I did put that bolt in the top, and you can see on this bracket how there's that, you know, U cut in it, so the downpipe will actually rest in there when you get it in place. That'll help you get the downpipe seated into the turbo, and then, you know, get the clamp settled around it. And something I used helped me out a little bit was I reached through, you know, the back side here, you know, in between the steering unit with a pair of, you know, pliers like this. And I was able to, you know, get up here and squeeze the clamp tight enough so I can actually get it threaded on there. Once you got it threaded on there, then you can get your wrench up in place. And, you know, you may need just I'm probably going to slide the bolt over a little bit just so there's more room in there for my wrench and socket and all that. Once I have the V-band clamp secured, then I'm going to, you know, tighten all these bolts down, put the other one in here, then move on to, you know, this clamp. Just push the mid pipe out of the way. And remember, this has to clip on just like that. And that's easy. It's clipped on. just lift up into place. Let's see how far I can get it by hand. Yeah, not very far. It was easier to fit this up into place. I just put the 2 bolts back in the hangers. It was a lot easier to just hold the mid pipe up with my shoulder or elbow. That way the bracket felt, sat flush, and then I could tighten these bolts down pretty easy. There's only one way to go when you put it back in the car. Blue to blue, and there's a specific way. They clip together. Lock it back into place. There, I dropped one. And they connect. Rock into place, and you're done. All right, that's gonna wrap up this episode of MegaBuild. At this point, all the parts we wanted to install are on the car. The only things we have left to do are fill the motor with oil, because I was doing an oil change at the same time because of certain oil things that we were disconnecting. We have to fill the coolant system and run it through its procedure, and then reassemble the whole front of the car. If you have your car all apart like I did, I would advise not putting the car back together until you've done the coolant system procedure, just in case you do have a leak in the coolant system anywhere. That way it's a lot easier to find, figure out what it is, address the issue, boom, you're done. Then reassemble the car. I don't really need to show you how to reassemble the car. I think I have like one little tip and pointer, and it's really just something to do with the intercooler on the bottom. Everything fit together really nice. I didn't have to alter anything on the front of the vehicle, didn't have to cut or trim anything. Intercooler fit great. I do plan on doing a couple reviews of different parts that I put on the car and how I think, they've performed, how easy it was to put in everything. I'm gonna come out with a couple things here and there, later on, because I know that this video covered so many things that I bet people are searching for videos on some of the things that I did, and I just threw it all in one big video. Because honestly, doing all this at once wasn't that hard. And since then, I've taken the water pump off the car 2 other occasions aside from what you saw. Once when I fixed the, intake thing, whatever. If you live in the Columbus area and you want to tackle this project, hit me up. Hit me up. Let's turn some wrenches. So like I said in the beginning of the video, at this point, I've had everything up and running on the car for over 3 months. I've been drag racing with it twice. I won't count the first time because I went to a different track that I usually go to, and I hate that other track, but I did go to a track the other day and the car performed great. Once I figured out the hardest thing that I've been trying to figure out with this car is the launch. And I know you're saying like, oh, it's an automatic, how hard is it to launch? You just push the gas pedal. No, like I was running my JB4 on map 7 on race gas. I had a tank full of 102 unleaded. Launching this car, it was kind of getting difficult. One little pointer helped me improve the launch in this car so much, and it was something that was so simple. I'm like, why didn't I not even think of that? But I want to say thanks to Steve. I don't even know if Steve watches these videos. He's got a 335 X-Drive. He was running, what, 12, 15 in the quarter mile? Car hauls, gets off the line. I mean, it's an X-Drive. That car just scoots. Even the announcer was like, check this guy, check out Steve and his BMW. Anyways, so I'm going to do a vlog style video of that in 2 days because I'm going to the track in 2 more days. And I want to share with you guys, my experience in running this car on the track and how it performs now that I've got all this stuff done, and that I think I finally perfected the launch on this car. It should be good. It should post pretty decent numbers. I don't think I'm going to beat any world records here because I'm pretty sure other guys with these mods are running about the time that I'm running, so I think it'll be good. But anyways, it's just a good benchmark to know that you're around where other people are with the same parts and modifications. All right. Once again, I've talked long enough. That's it. See you soon. Thumbs up, subscribe, all that stuff. Cool? Later.